Hi everybody, this is Saad. Earlier today I replied to a tweet that was posted by Gavin Newsom, the handsome former mayor of San Francisco. I've long predicted that he would likely eventually run for the highest office in the land. Let's see if my prediction proves true. But as is typical of folks in that region of Northern California, boy is he a moral individual, much more moral than the rest of you Nazis out there who wish to protect the territorial integrity of your country. Only bigots would care about such things. So he wrote earlier today, these children are barefoot in diapers, choking on tear gas. Women and children who left their lives behind seeking peace and asylum were met with violence and fear. This is in reference to the so-called folks who are coming with the caravan trying to get into the southern border of the United States. So I replied, sorry, Gavin Newsom, but vacuous virtue signaling won't suffice. We escaped imminent death during the Lebanese civil war, and yet we followed the process. We did not break into your house. There is endless misery around the world, and it would be great to save everyone from any suffering, but we live in the real world where there are real laws, real processes, real borders. Are you following, or should I type slower? So I went to the World Bank website. They produce a poverty report, and I'll put a link to the one that I'm going to be citing from or quoting from here. So they have a report on global poverty that they produce. Incidentally, one of my cousins was a big economist at the World Bank for many years. In any case, this is from page 21 of the report. It's figure 1.1, global poverty rate and number of poor 1990 to 2015. It looks at the number of people and the percentage of such people out of the global population who were considered to fall under the rubric of extreme poverty. These are people as defined here as the number of people who live below $1.90 a day using 2011 purchasing power parity. So in 1990, there were 1,800,950,000 people who fit that rubric, if you like. Imagine almost 2 billion people around the world back then in 1990 who lived under $1.90 a day, which constituted back then 35.9% of the world's population. And then it gives you sort of the curve from 1990 all the way to recently 2015. So we went from 1,895,950,000 people who lived under that poverty line. Today it's 736 million. So almost reduced threefold. And what used to be 35.9% of the population who lived under absolutely unimaginable poverty back then, today, then it was 35.9%, now it's down to 10%. 10% meaning the 736 million people who live under $1.90 per day. Now imagine the kind of misery that these people live under. When you go to Starbucks and buy a single coffee on a given day, you spent more than 10% of the world's population makes in a given day. That's tragic. It's sad. It's grotesque. But it doesn't mean that that reality implies that these 736 million people, if they all rushed, suppose they all lived in a geographically adjacent country to yours, if they rushed to the border with their children, these children are innocent. They are in circumstances that were not of their choosing. They didn't do anything to be living under such dire poverty. It's certainly not the children, let alone, I'm sure, the parents. It's very difficult for them to get out of these realities. That doesn't mean, though, that borders don't exist. That doesn't mean, though, that if people say, well, we can't let in, we can't absorb everyone who has hardships that they face, that doesn't make you a racist. It doesn't make you immoral. It doesn't make you a bigot. It simply recognizes that economics is about constraints. If we had enough money for everybody to have Aston Martins, well, then that'd be great. But the reality is that it's a fixed pie, and we do know that certainly Western countries are astoundingly generous in terms of the aid that they provide to those who are less fortunate. So if as these ultra ostrich progressives try to argue when they say what kind of country of horrible bigots we are, if that were true, then the numbers that you see in terms of how much of our taxes go to pay to complete anonymous people, right? I mean, think about the evolutionary calculus, right? We did not evolve the emotional, the cognitive, the behavioral systems to wish to help every single person who is a random stranger to us who lives 6,000 miles away. And yet, with our system, through our taxes, we do end up, in whichever big or small way, helping the downtrodden in many other places of the world. So the idea that I repeatedly see, I see it amongst my academic colleagues, the idea that you even have an instinct, a penchant to say, no, people can't just come in here. No, it's not okay for undocumented immigrants to be absorbed because, bruh, they're just a small number. Remember the boiling frog parable, right? As long as you raise the temperature slowly, the frog doesn't know that it's being boiled. So today it's 500, tomorrow it's 1,000, the next day it's 8,000, the next day it's now 20 million undocumented, the next day it's, where does it stop? As of 2015, there are 736 million people who live in poverty conditions that are unimaginable to probably every single person who's watching this clip, right? That's less than $1.90 a day. Are you going to house all of them in your house? No. Does that make you immoral? Does that make you a bigot? Does that make you a Nazi? Does that make you a right-wing extremist? No. This is precisely what happens as I discuss all this in my forthcoming book. I know you all want to read it badly. I'm working on it. I explain in my book the tension between thinking versus feeling. We are both an affective animal. Our emotional system has evolved to solve very important adaptive problems. And we're also a thinking animal. We use our higher order cognition to solve many problems. So it's not as though it's either thinking or feeling. The problem arises, especially with the quote ostrich progressives, when they constantly fire their emotional system when it should be their cognitive system that's firing. So to engage in faux indignation that anyone who is concerned about borders is a bigot. I mean, look at these poor children coming from Guatemala and we're not letting them all in. You'd be hard pressed to find someone who is more existentially sensitive than I am. But that doesn't mean, though, that I think that it's a good idea for a country to open its borders because people who are truly suffering, but they're suffering not because they're about to be beheaded, as we were in Lebanon. They're suffering because of their economic circumstances. And that's horrible. And it would be great if no one lived under such dire conditions. But the world is not the one that we live in, where everybody can hold hand and sing Imagine by John Lennon. So if you're out there and you are one of the millions who does believe that we should be a caring people without being suicidally empathetic to everyone who is otherwise suffering, don't worry. You're not a bigot. You're not evil. You're not grotesque. You're just a person who lives in the real world. Have a good week, everybody. Cheers.